I'm Bryan. That's my email address if you want to get in touch with me. Today I'm going to talk to you about how you can get a meeting with anybody. I've had a lot of experience with this. I've worked for a number of startups. I was always in sales. I was always trying to reach people who didn't know me, people who didn't want to talk to me, people who I was trying to get them to buy our products or get them interested in what we offer. It started, my journey here to the stage today started 4 years ago. I was at a conference in Napa Valley, California. Anybody familiar with Tim Ferriss, like 4 Hour Workweek? Show of hands. So Tim, he's written a couple books, bestsellers. He had a conference, it's called Open the Kimono, and he was sharing how he wrote best-selling books. So I paid $10,000. My wife thought I was crazy for spending that kind of money, and I went to the conference, and they asked the speakers, who I really respected, like, hey, how do you get a meeting with somebody if you don't know them? And I'm sitting in a room like this, in my chair, interested in what they're going to say, because I've been, studying this for, 10, 12 years. And they said, listen, you can cold call, or, if you know the person. I'm sitting in my chair and thinking, that is so wrong. That is what everybody says. And it doesn't work. And I've tried it, and it's false. And at the same conference, they said, you have to share your best stuff. So whatever you're holding on to, like whatever it is that share that with people. So I found the people who asked the question, and I hadn't shared my process that I'm going to show you guys today until that point. I found the people, and I said, listen, here's what you need to do. And I'm going to walk you through that process. I shared that process. I put out a template on the internet. And the Next Web picked that up. And their sales team started to use the email process for all the sponsors you see here. They also used the same process for all the speakers. So I wanted to show you the email that NextWeb sent to me back in September. So Bryan, and I get a lot of emails. We have 70,000 subscribers, business-to-business salespeople who subscribe to our newsletter. I've been following your work for a while. I love what you're doing, but I'll make this email quick. Are you free May 26th, May 27th, 2016? That's today, right? That's what actually brought me here. We'd love to have you keynote the Next Web Conference. Here's what I want to show you. I want to show you what my eye was drawn to, because what I'm looking for in an email as the reader is an opportunity for myself. Right, so close to 20,000 people from Amsterdam, from 85 different countries. Okay, it's credibility, right? If I want to reach a lot of people, I have an opportunity to reach a number of people. Publicity, they're telling me what's in it for me, 500 journalists, 14 million page views, networking. The other thing I want to know is, like, who else is speaking? Who else is going to be there? Because really I'm making a decision on, is this going to be worth my time? The networking, and then fun as hell. I didn't care about any of that. I like what he said. What do you say, Bryan? How can I make this a win for you? All you're really doing, if you think about sales, if you think about marketing, you're just asking for the first date. Like, you're just asking the girl or the guy for their number, and that's it. Now, immediately what I did was I didn't do anything with it. I just forwarded it over to somebody else and said, hey, vet this and see if it's the real thing. Let's see. Let me go back. All right, so these are the kinds of guys that I was trying to get in touch with. And I want you to get the perspective of the customer and what they're receiving. And many of you are probably receiving very similar emails. If you see you have a company, a lot of people are trying to reach you, and you have to decide really quickly. You actually decide within 3 seconds, am I going to delete it, am I going to read it, or am I going to do nothing with it? So within 3 seconds as you're scanning your inbox, you make that decision. And so I want you to hear what Colin has to say.
I'm Colin Sutton. I'm the director of social media within OMD. We're an Omnicom media group, and we represent Apple, Intel, Monster.com, FedEx, and a number of other Fortune 50 companies. I direct the social media business within OMD, and so I'm helping to vet vendors and introduce new technologies to our company and to the leaders of the digital business. It depends on whether or not I really see value in the email, but when I get 10 to 15 emails a day, I probably respond to one. Yeah, so out of the 9 or 10 people that write me every day, I probably will end up getting 3 to 5 emails from them on a regular basis. And I still only respond to one. So now I'm responding to 1 out of 30. A lot of people that write me, so in terms of responding and who I respond to, a lot of people write to me without really understanding my position or understanding the value that they can bring to our company. And so they're coming out of left field, asking the wrong questions, and representing the companies that don't even really show value to my buyers. I'd say the most annoying thing about emails that I get from vendors and technologies that want to get into OMD is cut and paste, basically a cold call via email. So you get a lengthy email that isn't on track and isn't the right type of value or the right type of vendor we're looking for, and it's obvious cut and paste, very impersonal, without a real connection. Let's say I probably get about 50 calls a month. I try not to answer my phone ever because of that. I know when my phone is ringing at the office, I know that it's a vendor trying to get a meeting, and so I never pick it up. There's always a voicemail. So everybody that calls leaves a voicemail. It doesn't give me any more motivation to call them. That's a good question. What are the red flags that I get via email? So a lot of them are the subject line. So if the subject line is just cut and paste standard sales pitch, that's a strong red flag. People do trying to be conversational, and they try and force a relationship or the idea that we have a relationship that doesn't really exist. So they have to strike a fine balance. So there's a couple things that would get people into the meeting. The first is if it's really a technology that we see value in and something that can be a leader within our company or something that can help our company become differentiated or a differentiator for us. If we really spot something that is going to be the next thing, then we get them for a meeting right away. That'd be one reason why people would get in. Another is personal recommendation. So I'd say 9 out of 10 of my friends that recommend somebody to meet, I'll meet immediately. The last one is probably if it's a recommendation from my boss. So those get in immediately.
Sometimes when you're growing your business, it feels like this. And I know in sales, this is how every day felt for me. Who here sells to businesses? You have your customers are businesses. All right, who here has consumers as your customers? And who here has no customers yet? Okay, just starting out. So if we look at the facts, there's 25 million businesses in Europe. There's 5 million businesses in the US. There's about 200,000 B2B companies. In Europe, only 45% of the companies last 5 years, and only 1 in 25 companies last 10 years. 8 to 10 companies fail within the first 18 months. That's a US stat. 95% of the companies never reach $1 million in sales. 0.08% will ever reach 5 million. Only 1.5% ever reach 10 million. Who here is over, like, say, 10 million in revenue in their business? And who's over 5 million? Okay, and over $1 million? Okay. You would think that, okay, it's because you don't have the funding, you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the expertise, but even the VC-backed companies are failing. 3 out of 4 companies are failing. Things are also changing. So phone usage is down. Americans talk for 25 minutes a day. Japanese talk 4.5 minutes. Germans talk the least out of anyone, 3 minutes. The average salesperson makes 52 dials. They're not getting any responses. Coca-Cola and JP Morgan Chase actually shut down voicemail for their company last year. So there's no voicemail for Coca-Cola employees. There's no voicemail for JP Morgan Chase employees. Companies like HubSpot, which I'll cover in a little bit, they don't even have a phone. Like when you call, you can't even call the person. They have to go into a special room, for you to reach them. So everything's changing. So the first thing, whenever I want to reach out to anybody, I think of outreach like I think of fishing. And I want you to imagine that you're going fishing, and there's 3 different lakes. And in the first lake, there's a lot of fish in this lake. So, you're considering going fishing in that lake. Now, the next lake, there's a lot of fish in that lake, but they're really big fish. So if you're going to go home, bring them to your family, obviously you want to catch some big fish to show them. Now, the third lake not only has a lot of fish, they have big fish, but they have fish that are hungry, and they want your bait. And they want to eat, what you have. So when you go out and you're doing outreach, when you're doing emails, when you're sending this to anybody, you want to think, who is it that actually wants your product? Who is it that actually wants your service? And who is your best customer? So the first question I ask is, who is it that is most likely going to need this, has a pain, has an issue? Because what I've learned in sales is it's not my ability to sell you. No one wants to buy from you, right? If I want to influence somebody, I have to influence them based on what already influences them. It's not like, hey, I'm going to just show you some amazing presentation and you're going to immediately want it or buy it. My job is to understand their perspective and to match my product, whatever your product is, with the customers that need it. So I thought, okay, my business, who already has my customers? So we're looking for, say, a company that's spending $20,000 to $50,000 a year to generate leads for their business. I thought, okay, HubSpot already has all these customers. They're tech enabled, and so I reached out to them. I wrote them an email, and they marketed our service to their customer base. We reached 883,000 people. I have a small team. There's no way we could have done this. We wrote 3 articles. We did a webinar. We did a slideshare that had 91,000 views. They tweeted it out. They have 663,000 followers. We have a team of 5 people. So one email I sent, now this is for, like, say, consumers. Who can you partner, can you cooperate with to get your product into market? Who already has your customers? Or who's a really large customer that would be a great customer for you, that you could contact? One email, that's all I sent. So the next question you have to ask is, who is your buyer? In B2B sales, and I'll just talk about B2B sales for a second, the number one issue you have is you're not talking to a decision maker. So when I was selling, I'd sell advertising. I worked for a company called Jingle Networks. We raised $85 million. I was the sales guy who had a phone, a business card, a computer, an email address, and they said, hey, kid, make this happen. And not only that, we have really high goals, and we have to hit our numbers for all the VCs. And our marketing didn't generate the kinds of leads because I had a very, very specific buyer, say a director of marketing, VP of marketing. I'd email them, and then they would send it to the agency, and I would never, actually get to talk to, the customer. People in technology talk about this as well, I have a complex sale. You have a complex sale because you're never talking to somebody who can actually buy from you. It's like trying to sell to a 16-year-old who's going to buy a car, where really mom and dad are buying the car. Mom and dad have a very different perspective. They're not going to buy a sports car for a 16-year-old, even though the 16-year-old wants it. So in B2B, the first thing you have to do after you identify who it is you should be talking to is who is the actual person in the organization. So if you think about or have empathy for your customer, so you always want, this is my product, I'm the sales guy, and this is the customer. So if I'm doing any kind of communication, so speaker, audience, right? So if I'm doing any kind of communication, I have to close my eyes and think, okay, how do they feel? What's important to them? What's going on in their world? Because I'm writing, I'm communicating, they don't care what I have to say. What they care about is themselves. So if I'm writing the director of marketing at, say, McDonald's or Apple or GE or any organization, director of marketing has a boss. That person has a boss. Part of their job is to do a good job in the eyes of their boss and, cover their ass. So what I identified is I'd write the person, they'd always, delegate it down to somebody else. So what if I wrote all the people above them? So I call this the waterfall technique. So what you do here is you write the people above them. They also help you self-select who's the right person in the organization for you to be talking to. Now, I'm not talking about subject lines. I'm not talking about should it be a short email, should it be a long email, because my outcome is a customer. My outcome is the deal. And the subject line just gets you, to the dance. If you want to date the girl or you want to get married, you have to identify up front and do a lot more work. Now, people don't do this. This is not, I could give you all the systems and you could blast out a lot of emails, but you're going to be unsuccessful because people that you're trying to reach are receiving 2,000, phone calls, emails from people like yourself trying to pitch their product who are just cutting and pasting and saying, hey, it's a lot of time. So the next thing you have to ask yourself is, what do you say? What do you actually get someone to read? When they're reading it here, what do you actually say so they respond to you? There's 144 billion. In 1996, there's 144 billion emails every year. Now there's that many emails every single day. The average person, 115 emails a day. They check their email 288 times a day. It's like 36 times an hour. It's crazy. CEOs get 700 to 800 emails. Tim Cook wakes up at 3:45 in the morning at Apple to check his email and respond to emails. But people do respond. People, so like if all of you have products, there's people in the world that can literally change your life if you just had the opportunity. I mean, the person might be sitting next to you. I have no idea. So there's all sorts of case studies. So what are these people doing that other people aren't doing? This is a typical email. And it's like, I left you a voicemail. I thought you would be interested. Our clients are largest and most respected. Traditional suppliers' risk management solutions struggle to rate private companies. Ours is the only methodology that... The person who's reading this is like, I don't care, because it's all written from the perspective of the person who's writing the email, not from the perspective of the person who's receiving the email. You need to create a credible opportunity for the person you're writing. The next web, when they wrote me, like, hey, do you want to speak to thousands of people who are really smart, from all over the world and have a free trip to Amsterdam? You're a dad and you have a weekend away. Like, that's the email, if they had included like, hey, you're really busy, do you want to get away from the kids and like check out Europe? Like, yeah, like sign me up. They don't care about you. They don't care about me. They care about themselves. So how do you create an opportunity for them? This is an email. So this is one of the emails that I gave away, that I share with people, and I'll kind of walk you through. Now, the important thing here is not the tactics, it's the principles behind it. So it's an email that we sent to McDonald's, the subject line, appropriate person, because really what I'm solving here is who's the person in the organization that I should be contacting. Now, before that, I already have solved for who is it I should be writing to that is most likely going to shift my world. I'm writing in hopes of finding the appropriate person who handles whatever it is that, marketing, technology, like whatever it is. I also wrote to these people. If it makes sense to talk, let me know how your calendar looks. Now I have to start creating an opportunity for them. Now, this is called the peak end hypothesis. So the person remembers the first thing and the last thing that you say. So the first thing I say is, if I'm writing McDonald's, I'm specializing in helping restaurants increase sales and revenue. I wrote that to a marketer. Like, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, like whatever. Like, listen, I want, people buying hamburgers, spending more money, buying milkshakes, getting there, through the drive-through, buying coffee. That's what their end goal is. Everything else is just a means to that. So you have to identify, what the actual end outcome is for those people. And then I have to remove the barrier to entry by referencing other clients. They don't know who VoodooVox is. I mean, who here knows who VoodooVox is or Jingle Networks? Nobody, right? And so if I'm not representing Facebook or Apple or Amazon. So everything is based on the merit of the email. Now, they know Burger King, P&G, and Chili's. So reference other clients that you work with, because they don't know you, they will know other people. And then your ask, your request. If you're the appropriate person to speak with, what does your calendar look like? If not, whom do you recommend I talk to? Word choice matters. Calendar versus schedule. If you think of calendar, you're thinking weeks and months. Schedule, you're thinking days and to-do lists and hours. My schedule's busy, my calendar's open. The word talk versus meet versus call. I just want them to be open to the idea of a conversation about this. So I can get anyone to respond, and now I have a new problem. I'm now sharing this with people all over the world. We created an online training, similar like, say, Khan Academy, and people are in the Netherlands and Germany and Japan and France and all over the place. And they're like, hey, it may work in America, but my market's different. And then I have to do a scale. So I'm like, okay, how do I solve this for people so they can write the email themselves based on their product, their solution, whatever it may be? The key here is you have to think how the customer feels. So do not try and sell people. Everybody, like, who here, like, can picture in your mind when somebody was trying to sell you? Can, like, you raise your hand if you, like, you know, like, that feeling of, like, oh man, this person just won't shut up. Like, you know, they're just like, they're trying to convince me I'm not interested, and you kind of like have that 1,000-mile stare, or you just mentally check out. That is not what you want to do. So you want to think how the other person feels, and in your communication, you need to get that. So if you want to influence somebody, okay, so after over 1,000 sales calls with people that have, you know, been buying from the best of the best in the world who are in sales and trying to differentiate my thing, my widget, which is brand new, that nobody has ever bought, here's the key. If I want to persuade or influence somebody, I have to understand their emotions. And I have to understand what is the frustration that the person has. So this person over here, what are they frustrated with that they don't want to deal with? Because, you know, you're not Advil, you're the solution to the headache. Now, you think, okay, well, your life's going to be great, and this is what, you know, what's going to happen or whatever, and they'll be motivated by the desire. But typically, the desire is based on something that really annoys them or something that they fear. So when you're talking to or thinking about your marketing, your communication, you need to understand the trigger events, you know, of what people fear and are frustrated with. But it's a very, very specific process here. Let's see. So you need to figure out what you're really solving for them. I asked for permission to move this, so I'm not supposed to break it. So when you're communicating to somebody, it's like asking for a first date. You're just asking for their number. You're just asking to go to dinner. You're not asking to go away for the weekend. So there's 3 units of time with a customer. There's the before unit, there's the during unit, right? And then there's the after unit. So the before unit is before you're ever working with the person, before they ever talk to you. The during unit is while you're working with them. After unit, it's like, okay, they're a customer, they're happy, they like my service, like whatever. When people interview their customers, they interview them from the after unit. What was life like? Are we great? Yeah, you're great, you know. And the person who's considering you never identifies or relates to that. I have to meet you in your mind. Right? So if I meet you in your mind right now, you're like, what's the subject line? What's the system? What's the template? What's the tactic? It's bullshit because it's not going to work. So I'm not going to give you that because I'm going to give you, you know, what actually works. So when you interview them, you have to interview them, and I want you to write this down. The key to this, so if you're in Germany or Japan or whatever, you interview your customers because they're all, you know, you can identify the emotions that those people have. Before we ever started working with you, what were you frustrated with? Before we ever talked to you. Because if I want to meet them in their mind, I have to meet them in the conversation that they're having in their head before I ever talk to them. So closing my eyes right here, what's the conversation that person's having in their head? So for your customers, you're here to solve a problem for them. So before we ever started working with you, what were you frustrated with? Before we started working with you, what did you want? You know, what were you concerned with? Whatever they say, write that down, put it on your website, put it in your email. That is gold. They're giving you the exact things because your customers think and feel like your prospects more than you or I ever think and feel like our prospects. So in recap, identify your high-value customers who need what you have. Interview your current customers to identify the fears, frustrations, and desires they had before they ever spoke with you. And create a credible opportunity for the reader. If you want to download a template, if you want to learn this, you got to do it by taking action. So a free template, it's the same template that the Next Web used, breakthroughemail.com, TNW. And if you want to email me or talk to me, Bryan at Breakthrough Email, and I'll be over there. So thank you so much.